Very well. My name is John Mado once again. I'm here on behalf of Catholic Answers, a lay Catholic group that attempts to provide answers to various faith questions. Privately, I'm in the field of medicine, clinical medicine, and counseling psychology is what I practice. And I run a school wellness program where I assist students and teachers navigate through various issues that arise in this particular to navigate through issues that they face in matters discipline, as well as issues anxiety, sadness, and depression that we're talking about today, substance use and such.
All right.
Yeah.
And I like that you have such a beautiful initiative, because truth be told, sometimes our children go through sadness, go through depression,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Anxieties
Yes.
that we parents have no idea about.
Yeah.
We get to realize when it is too late.
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
or even almost impossible to handle it. Okay,
Yeah,
such an admirable initiative, and you're going to be giving us your contacts towards the end of the show, so that either parents or those in charge of different schools can get in touch with you.
Indeed.
But first things first, Daktari, today we are talking about breaking free from anxiety, sadness, and depression, and you are the right person to be here to help us navigate through these waters. And many people think emotional struggles happen to weak people, right? Why is it important to understand that psychological suffering can happen to anyone when life stretches us beyond what we can handle?
Well, it's unfortunate if for one to think this might only befall those who are weak.
Yeah.
But the fact is that these three manifestations of psychological pain, that is sadness, anxiety, and depression, would occur to anyone, and this so would happen when when we stretch the capacity of human ability to withstand, let's say, stress, okay, which actually does happen often. Last week or the week before? The week before we spoke about human limitation being a common characteristic of human beings, and as often as whatever we might pass through in this life might stretch beyond our capacity, or we come against our limitation, then we are bound to become anxious, sometimes to be depressed, and third is to be sad, okay? And it doesn't mean we are weak. It is actually precisely as a consequence of our limitation as human beings. We have not all the power to overcome the suffering we will face. And that is in terms of knowledge, let's say, or ability. So we are not omnipotent as God is. Neither do we know everything as He does. Neither can we be everywhere at the same time. So, and in as often as we face up to things that go beyond these abilities, go beyond our ability, then we will risk being anxious. We are always risking being anxious, sad, and depressed. And that doesn't mean we're weak, but that is primarily what we are made of, in a manner of speaking. Okay? Yeah, so I wouldn't say weakness, or whoever might think whoever is anxious or depressed is weak will not be doing that party a just service.
And talking about human limitation, Daktari, how does this understanding that as human beings we are bound to be limited change the way we treat people who are struggling emotionally?
Very good question indeed. How does our understanding of the fact that we're limited, how would that change our perception? Well, just as it is in managing managing, let's say, clinical conditions, the best thing, the first thing ever is to understand where one is coming from. Okay, and let's say if me and you or anyone else who is in audience right now knows anybody who is facing up to any sort of suffering, then the understanding that the capacity that they are not in themselves weak or lack the capacity to stand up to the situation and overcome it, but it is a basis of human existence that we are limited. In fact, limitation, as we discussed last, I think 2 weeks ago, is to a certain extent the basis of what makes a human being, all right? And to accept that truth, that in our everyday existence, the one thing that is certain, we will always come against something that overcomes or rather goes beyond our capacity to manage. Then that acceptance actually would limit one's anxiety. Okay, this kind of brings us to a certain extent to the matter to do with how to limit anxiety, because you find that, let's say, now that I'm now talking about anxiety. Okay, you find that sometimes individuals are anxious as a consequence of their lack of ability, or rather their thought that they cannot control everything, or their inability to control everything, and they find that as a flaw in themselves as persons.
Yeah.
And you find that the truth is, me and you, or anybody else under the sun, Bramwel, none of us is able to control anything. And the awareness of that fact, of that particular point of our limitation, as opposed to bring us anxiety, should actually ground us on that particular reality. And the acceptance of that kind of should bring us some level of calmness, okay? And that in itself is a point of wisdom. Beyond it is proper psychological bearing, in the sense of not being anxious when all of a sudden, it's not actually all of a sudden, but when we become aware of the fact that, okay, many are the things happening around me, if not everything, I can't control any one of them. And that does not make me any less a human being, but actually confirms the very fact that I am a human being. And as such, no point losing my peace, but accepting this as it is. For that is what really God wills for us. I think the Lord speaks to St. Paul when he tells him that his grace is sufficient for him when he himself wonders about what he terms as a thorn that was given in his flesh, that oftenly led him to transgress God's law. I think St. Paul talks of this. Then the Lord tells him that my grace is sufficient for you. That could be spoken of as a point where the Apostle St. Paul is anxious about his inability to overcome a weakness he himself experienced in his person. But he transcends that thought of anxiety and rests his hope in God. So his faith, to a certain extent, provides him with direction on how to actually settle himself, or how to live his experience as a human being. Beyond his psychological perception of his lack of capacity to overcome his weakness, he attends, or rather he taps into his faith, where God grants him explanation. So it does happen that in our lives as human beings, beyond just our psychology, if we have faith, then we also do actually get to bear better with our psychological pains. Okay, and maybe that is to leave it that, and also to invite our listeners to consider this thought, that in as much as, yes, we face psychological pain, there is hope not only in the treatments available psychologically, but if and when we also do have an high-arching faith, we get grounding and we even find purpose on how to face up to whatever it is.
And getting the ability to face whatever comes our way, Daktari, as I link it to what you've said in line with St. Paul's prayer to God about the thorn in his flesh, that automatically it takes me back or sends me directly to the serenity prayer. Okay? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay? Now, as I think of that serenity prayer, what actually keeps anxiety going inside a person, even when there is no immediate danger?
Okay, so it is sustained by hypervigilance, and hypervigilance here is simply increased alertness, in a manner of speaking. Okay, so you could say, what example could I use here? Hypervigilance and anticipatory fear. So one is, let's say when you find a guard, or like maybe a policeman guarding a bank, for example, the idea of their being there is to scan around for any sort of threats, in a manner of speaking. Okay, or let's speak of actually the bodyguard of the president. I think gives a better example, because often in Nairobi, when you find the policemen before a bank, they are often maybe storing or looking at their phones. So they're not hyper vigilant at all. No offense to the policemen, but this is just my experience. But when you perhaps look at the bodyguards of our president, you find that they are always standing at attention and looking left and right, scanning to see if there is any danger around the crowd, perhaps, to see if there might be need for intervention, isn't it?
Yeah.
You find that in our minds, and this would cause anyone anxiety, you find that one's mind is constantly on alert and seeking to see if there is any danger in perhaps wherever setting they are in, or what they might be anticipating. Let's say a new employee coming to a new job environment. They have never met anyone there, and they want to put their best foot forward, or rather to be them the best of them. They want really to be at their best. So you will find that they are not in any sense calm, but perhaps breathing fast, sweating in their face, and and such symptoms that accompany anxiety. And this actually sustains anxiety over time. If it is a short while, let's say, if it is only, for example, my being here today in this show, if let's say I'm anxious as a consequence of being on air, and it ends, my anxiety ends when the show ends, then you find that this anxiety will not need any medical treatment.
Okay.
But as a consequence of me being here, my anxiety is sustained throughout the day and maybe the whole week, that I am unable to do anything, but anxious as a consequence of the fact that you are interviewing me here the whole week, then I will need to be treated. So my hypervigilance, as a consequence of the fear of being listened to by many people on the radio, might sometimes be just short-lived to the duration of this particular show, or might continue for a long time. And if that's the case, then I will need treatment. And that this is just to use myself here as an example, and the show that we are in also as an example.
And talking about anxiety, Daktari, there is the element of overthinking. How do patterns like overthinking and fear, fear of the unknown, fuel anxiety over time?
Okay. Again, a good question, and in a sense, an addition as to what would as well, what we call exacerbate this condition, anxiety, overthinking. And you say, what was the second part? So overthinking
and fear.
And fear, yes.
Of the unknown.
And fear of the unknown. We hear about the word overthinking a lot lately, especially amongst the young. Oh, I overthink, or they overthink. the right way of putting it is actually some form of paranoia, okay? Is fearing, or one kind of, in their mind, they kind of come up with scenarios that are non-existent and actually end up having emotions as a consequence of those particular scenarios.
Yeah.
And as such, the unknown is something that kind of assails us every day. If we look at from the beginning, that's 4 weeks ago, we spoke of Ivan Yalom's 4 givens of life, and the fear of the unknown, or meaninglessness, and there was also death and freedom. I forget the 4th one. So these 4 things are matters that, to a certain extent, any normal human being faces up to, and actually evaluates their present position in life and where they might want to be in the future. And the discrepancy of those 2 things, where I am at now and where I want to come, might sometimes fuel anxiety or give in to paranoia, or what you're referring to as overthinking. And as often as one is not, let's say, if one is not grounded in the truth, or let's say in reality, then you find that their existence will be made less authentic by anxiety. So you find one unable to settle and partake to any form of task if perhaps they are I don't know, they are professional of some regard, then you find that they're unable to discharge their duties. One can't sleep, for example. One might lose sleep, lose appetite, and let's say just these 2 things. If you lose them, then your immune system is gone. Then you fall sick often. Worst case scenario is that you need hospitalization, and without treatment, worst case scenario is that one might die. Yeah.
Allow me to take a short commercial break, Daktari.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll be talking about the feeling of sadness.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
My
you.
dear listener, 0712-2233-85 still remains the SMS line. Don't go too far.
This is Radio Waumini, 88.3 FM. 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 This is Radio Waumini 88.3 FM. This is Radio Waumini.
Talking about breaking free from anxiety, sadness, and depression. And Daktari, I promise that when we come back, we'll be shifting gears to talk about sadness. All right?
Yes.
Sadness, because most of us are feeling like grief. We really try as much as we can not to sit with it, not to allow ourselves to go through it, but we tend to ignore it. Doctor, what happens when grief is ignored or rather rushed or suppressed? And how does allowing sadness to move help healing take place?
Okay. Thank you very much, Bramwel, on this particular opening you choose for this emotion, sadness. A very common emotion, in the sense that I would imagine everyone has experienced it. However, how we approach it, as you say, really does affect whether it's going to last for a protracted period, for a long time, or it's something that we are going to manage to get over and pick up ourselves and move on. In our culture, now that you speak of grief, okay, before we get to what happens in our culture, you find that sadness as emotion often comes as a consequence of an experience of loss and isolation. Okay, actually, the part of the two things, that is death and isolation. And these are experiences that we cannot avoid as human beings. Okay, and in our experience, and that is in our culture as Africans, and even as those who as well believe in God, okay, as Christians, there is always an attempt to suppress this feeling of sadness. Let's say, for example, in weeping, let's say at the experience of the death of a loved one, or just some form of loss. Let's say one loses a job, or a love, or let's say a breakup in a relationship. The common word you hear about is "it is well." I imagine this is something most people in Kenya are very much used to. Yes. Quite a lot. Yeah, we're like, oh, this XYZ happened to me. Like, and they're like, oh, it is well. It is going to be okay. Then you wonder, really, how true that is, if ever. Let's say, for example, one loses a loved one. How well is it at the face of the death of a loved one? The fact is, there is nothing well about it. And in fact, while one might get strength to live through that experience, but the fact is that a part of, I don't know where I read this, but let's say, for example, when one loses a friend or to death, a part of you dies with that person.
Exactly.
And if that is what one refers to as being well, and I mean, it's below par, I want to think, because a part of you is gone, and humanly speaking, and that is, if not for Christian faith, then that part will never be seen again. Okay, so to bring one to actually suppress their weeping, and in the face of such a loss of a loved one, or such a loss as of the death of a loved one, then is to rob them, I think, of something significant. In psychology, the thought or the teaching is that, let's say, mourning for for someone who is dead, or even for, let's say, the loss of a relationship, for example, and that is if one has a breakup, or let's say, or even a business, is something that is encouraged. Okay? Because it's by allowing yourself to experience the emotion that you are able to again pick up yourself and begin again. Okay. As such, then, suppression, and that is in regards to using such words as the one we've just kind of highlighted, it is well, will not be the best way of supporting anyone who is experiencing this form of emotion, that is sadness. But being there with them, and to a certain extent, even trying to bringing them to understand that, okay, it is okay to cry, and please do so for the present, because it's fitting an emotion for the experience of what you've lost. In fact, it's honoring. I think it's in certain cultures, even in honoring the dead, for example, you are allowed to mourn. I think this is a period that is in every culture. Yeah. And the church also helps us with this, I imagine. I mean, over the prayers of the prayers we say for the dead. We mourn them, honoring their experience, but in hope of restoring hope and finding sense of movement. Yeah.
Okay. And having to think about it, Daktari, things like mourning through grief, the easiest way we tend to sweep it under the carpet is simply by avoidance.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah.
So what usually happens when people avoid facing what they are truly dealing with?
Rightly put, avoidance is one other way in which persons try to deal with their sadness. And whenever people adopt this means, they kind of prolong the period of sadness.
Yeah.
Okay. And in an attempt to shorten the experience, they think that one might think, okay, so not talking about it or not going through whatever or unpacking whatever experience one has suffered might help one feel better, because there is great, I would say there is great focus on people remaining to be sane and normal in everyday life. That if one shows a form of weakness, and that is by, let's say, crying or shedding tears, or appearing to be unable to conduct themselves normally, then they're usually shunned or avoided. And so you find most people wanting to appear normal. And being normal here meaning that they don't want to show any sort of suffering.
Yeah.
But which prolongs the period of this sort of suffering, which prolongs the period of sadness. But now, even speaking about this it might tide over to the other bit of what we are talking about today, which is depression. Okay, and this is in line with seeking to appear normal and avoiding this particular emotion, and the much focus that we as a culture, I would say not only as Africans, but as a human people, as human beings, there is much focus on us remaining to be able to bear with whatever experiences we have every day. Yeah. And even in the face of illness. Okay. Well, illness is such that it tests our ability it tests our mortality, isn't it? Yeah. And in the face of it, we lose strength and even sometimes our psychology to be able to withstand whatever experiences we have. But as human beings, we want to be seen to be capable of withstanding all forms of pressure. But today, in this particular talk, or in the last 4 weeks, what we have tried to kind of paint, the picture I've been trying to paint, is that limitation is part of our existence. Yeah. And accepting it gives us strength in the face of the suffering we have to experience. And that does not make us weak, but confirms the very fact that as human beings, we actually are resilient enough to bear with most struggles. But there are times when it's a lot for what we are made of. And accepting that truth is in itself a point of strength and a point of wisdom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've put it correctly. And these are some of the mistakes that we make when we are journeying with people who are going through these difficult times like grief. All right. Personally, Dr. Let me put it closer home. I've had these a phrase about Bram, you are so strong. Oh, we did imagine. You are so strong. You see, Wakili, never tell me that statement.
No, I won't.
You know, I look at people, Bramwel, you are so strong. I just look at you and I keep quiet.
One never really truly knows what one is going through. No.
On the outwards, you might not see the tears.
Not at all.
But inside, I am in pieces.
Yes.
Okay? That is what people fail to understand at that particular point. All right? And for a long period of time, I just looked at I look at you and I keep quiet. What should I tell you anyway?
It will be hard to explain.
Exactly.
Yeah, it will be hard to explain.
Yeah, and talking about the reason that's why I brought it up or healing is that we brand people as strong when they are going through difficulty and fail to allow them to go through whatever they are going through as human beings.
True.
And to such an extent, we send them into depression.
I agree.
I was almost there.
Okay. Oh, really?
I was almost there when people were branding me this.
Oh, no.
When at my lowest,
really?
I've lost a loved one, and somebody, you are so strong. So, Daktari, when someone feels empty, powerless, or disconnected, how does rebuilding meaning, personal urgency, and relationships help them slowly come back to life?
Okay. You touched on a very sensitive topic there, and part of our discussion today, which is on the part of depression, the losing of meaning. It will require professional psychotherapy actually to restore meaning, okay? And in many cases, medical treatment, okay? And so we find that therapy in this regard helps individuals challenge rigid critical beliefs, okay? And that is in regards to treatment of depression, okay? Re-establish behavioral activation and rebuild social connection. I say this because your question there actually tides us over from sadness, that is, to the matter, to our last, to the third aspect of psychological pain that we're looking into today, and that is depression, okay? The approach to help one through this sort of experience ought to be quite structured, hence the talk on matters to do with psychotherapy, okay? And that actually does employ various schools of thought actually to help one navigate through this hardship. Well, it's a form of hardship in a manner of speaking, okay? Because depression affects motivation, energy, and cognition, and that is thinking. To wait to feel better before seeking help often might prolong this experience.
Okay, exactly. And talking about prolonging, Daktari, let's talk about the foundations of healing a little bit, because again, you know, I'm posing these questions from my own experiences.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Because if I was not properly grounded, Daktari, this young man would not be here today. All right, because of these things I'm talking about here, because this topic is very, very much connected to me.
Your experience,
Exactly. Talking about the foundations of healing, Daktari. You've mentioned about structure.
Yes.
In your explanation. Why do structure, routine, and connection make such a big difference in recovery?
Okay. Why do structure, routine, and connection make a big difference in recovery? Okay. Well, Bramwel, the three bits of the emotional expression of emotional pain that we are touching on today kind of create some level of ambivalence, meaning they kind of destabilize one. Okay. Kind of, and in this, to just use a small example, is like the common English phrase is to pull the rug from one's feet. Okay, it's like, and so let's say you lose a loved one, and kind of your life goes into chaos, okay, because up to that point you've never experienced a life without that person.
Exactly.
And now here you are at a point of life where they're not there anymore. and you are supposed to continue normally. In fact, to be expected to continue normally is the abnormal thing.
Exactly. I agree with you. That's what people don't know, by the way.
Precisely. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And that's why most people make the greatest mistake by telling you, oh, it's going to be well, or you're being so strong.
Yes.
It's quite unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
To lose it in this regard is the normal thing. I don't know. I hope our listeners are getting us clearly here, because it's the truth. Because when you've lost that which held you together, and let's say it's a loved one, let's say it was a job, for example, or even it was a relationship, then the next normal thing is your mind to actually go out of control and think of the worst case scenarios. Because then, let's say it's a loss of a relationship, then because you've been betrayed by a friend, then you cannot, you don't get to trust people very easily. Then that's where you get people talking of overthinking, because you're always thinking, okay, the next person I'm going to meet is going to also take advantage of me. Or let's say it's death, in the face of death. So then you're like, okay, so what becomes of me now? If you're a young person, or even if you're old, perhaps it's your dad, or it's your mom, or it's your brother, and these people formed a part of you, to whom else do you run to? Because one comes to a state of helplessness, right? Yeah, and if ever they don't, let's say in the face, if ever they don't have any grounding, let's say in something higher, and this is where our faith comes in often. Okay, for those who have faith or profess some form of faith, we'll say they're lucky enough to have a form of faith. Then there is hope. Not to mean that those who don't have it, there is no hope, but we find that our brethren who believe in God, then they begin to actually also consider the idea of eternal life, let's say in the face of death, okay? And they might question its reality in that instance, or even get angry at God for allowing such an experience to them. But you realize that the beginning of such a conversation, or even if it is in the light, it begins from anger. But as long as one begins to talk, or begins to consider the idea of eternal life, or the idea of their faith, there is always the door that opens to one finding their grounding in time. Okay, and so faith here kind of provides a structure from where one can actually begin to build themselves once again, or pick themselves. Okay.
Daktari, our time is really moving. Actually, it is over.
I see.
But this is a very, very a sensitive issue to talk about, because rarely do we get this kind of conversations. There's a lot that we have not touched, but we look for some time so that we can go through it. But just in your parting shot and in your closing, kindly give your closing remarks in regards to when healing begins, all right, and also give the number so that our listeners can get in touch just in case.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bramwel. Healing begins when people are allowed to stop fighting their humanity, okay, and start learning how to carry it, okay, all right? In this way, psychological healing and faith do not compete, okay, we are told, okay? They cooperate in restoring the human person, okay? And following as our time is over, should there be anyone listening and want any assistance, my assistance, they could reach out on the number 0710 300 114. That is 0710 300 114. Apotheke Mind and Health is a clinic. And so thank you once again, Bramwel, for the audience. we look forward to having more time to continue this conversation on these sensitive issues.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daktari, for, I know you are a busy man, but for giving me some time for actually a whole month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Asante sana.
You're welcome.
And you've said
glad.
a very, very powerful statement.
Yes.
Healing begins when people are allowed to stop fighting their humanity.
Yep.
It's at learning how to carry it.
Yep.
The easiest way I carried it, Daktari,
Yes.
is to remind Bramwel that you are learning to live without your loved one.
We are always learning every day.
I
something
kept
new.
on telling Bramwel that. You see?
Yes.
I kept on reminding Bramwel that you are a new being. You are learning to live without them. And you are not alone.
No.
There is someone beautiful besides you.
Yes, there is always.
And here is someone beautiful besides me. That's why I love this song by the Daktari. I'm playing one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah?
She carried me through.
Okay.
And she's carrying me through all along.
I see.
That has been my time, my dear listener. Thank you so much for your time. Let's do this again tomorrow, God willing.